Welcome back to Why Dad. Today we're tackling a topic every dad faces but few talk about: burnout, breakdown, and how to rebuild. Our guest, Marchem Pfeiffer, knows this road firsthand. He's a father, an author, and an emotional alignment coach who helps people rise again after life knocks them down. Together, we're exploring what it means to lead yourself first, how dads can recover from burnout, bring clarity and energy back into their homes, and show up in a healthier and more balanced way. Welcome, Marchem. We're excited to have you on.
I'm excited to be on. From the conversation we've been having, I'm like, oh, this is going to be awesome. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation. Let's keep it moving.
Yeah. And in our conversations, you shared a lot about your journey, and has been filled with a lot of angst and ups and downs, but that has also led you to where you are today. Can you share a little bit about your story for our listeners so that they know where you're coming from?
Yeah. So I've been all over the place, different parts of my career, starting with the Air Force, and then I've been worked for the state, federal government, private contractor. But what I found along the way is that so little of the people that I worked for actually knew what they were doing. So it's that then in turn is I'm super young in the military. And then so there's people that are way older than me, that are my bosses, and I know how to speak up or advocate for myself. So in turn led into the foundation of, hey, the next stop, that's happening again. That's the next stop, that's happening again. And then what led to it was my stop with the Ohio National Guard, and that led to me being diagnosed with workplace PTSD and put on medication and having to go to counseling and everything else that went with that. But what I've learned is that that's tied to so much of what I do is learning how to correctly advocate for myself, learning how to communicate what my needs are, but also it trails back into being a good parent. And in my case, because I'm divorced and I'm co-parenting, learning myself and how to correctly name the things that are going on while still being present to my kids.
Okay. Yeah, man, you covered so much there, and you drop like lackadaisically almost the like workplace PTSD. So we should come back to that, because I mean that's a big deal. And then you hit another point which is really big: communicate your needs, like learning how to communicate your needs, which also insinuates knowing what your needs are in the first place, which I think that can often be a challenge, is like knowing what do I need and do I actually deserve that? Is that resonate at all?
Oh, that's good. Deserve that. Yeah. That's the great way to frame that. Part of it is like truly understanding yourself and holding yourself accountable, looking yourself in the mirror, understanding that sometimes when you look at yourself in the mirror, you see a stranger. You don't understand why that person is the reflection that currently is, but also understanding that it's okay, especially as a man, to speak up and say, that's not right. That's not okay. That affects me in this way. Sometimes that hurts. Sometimes that doesn't feel good. And this is how, especially when it comes to being a leader and being a parent at the same point, is you truly have to get to the point of knowing yourself, right? In the education world, both my degrees are in education. In the education world, they teach you, if you're going to work around students, you should understand what biases you're bringing to the table, right? Anything that covers that, you should have that stop at the door and understand that, okay, that's the person I am, and I'm working on being better, but I'm not going to be that person when I'm around the students. In this case, it's when we're around our teams that we lead, or the kids we're around that we're raising, that you have to learn how to not be that person and work on that person consistently, but be the person that your kids and your team need consistently.
Yeah. And do you feel like that there's ever a conflict, and maybe even detrimentally so, between that person you're working to be and that person that you're keeping at bay, so to speak?
Yes, you're trying to create the least amount of friction, right? There's friction points, and what can get you to the point of where everything will run smoothly. So it's often there's times where I question myself of how did I get here? This wasn't the plan. I didn't want to have to go through the things I went through at work or go through divorce or have to co-parent. But what I had to do is stop and create a foundational piece of this is what it is today. This is the person I'm going to be. This is who I'm going to deal with around me. And no matter what, I'm going to keep working on being a better version of that person.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Taking that into account, like where do you suggest like someone like us start to identify, or you mentioned if you look in the mirror, it's like, how did I get here and whatnot? Obviously, that's like the first step. If you've recognized you're not who you thought you would be or who you want to be, what comes next in that to get back on that track?
I guess what comes next is how deep you're willing to go, right?
Mhm.
Are you willing to, like I said, hold yourself accountable, but also at the same point, allow yourself to heal from the things that you've been through? And often with many people, not just men, but people as a whole, is that there's so many stopping points of we don't allow ourselves to heal. We don't allow ourselves to say that happened in the past. Now I'm moving forward and I don't want that to happen again. So we create the conditions by holding ourselves accountable where we're allowing the healing to happen. We're allowing ourselves to be fully present to the people around us, specifically our kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also to understand that what we're trying to do is realign ourselves to being the people, the person that people expect us to be, but also the person that you want yourself to be. You're allowing yourself to be, right? And
Right.
you're eliminating those barriers. You're eliminating those pain points, and you're allowing yourself to move forward.
That comment you made about realigning yourself with the person that you want to be makes me think of, I'm going to butcher this, but I think this was the quote from Gandhi: "Is happiness is when what you say, think, and do are all in alignment." Which sounds like it's very similar to what you're talking about here.
Yeah, I read a lot about, and speak a lot about realignment and what that means and how you're allowing yourself to be misaligned, and often it's not your fault,
Mhm.
right? But it's how you're reacting to that thing. So it's like those telltale signs that come from, oh, I'm leading up to being burnout, or I know this isn't the right place for me as far as being at work. How do I stop and readjust and reevaluate and do something different? So the telltale signs for me were sitting in my car for 15 minutes in the parking lot and deciding whether or not it was better for me to quit or to go inside and keep paying my bills. So when you get to the point of you're being second guessed, you're being talked down, dismissed, condescended, right? How is that affecting everything else in your life? So then it's leading to you're not sleeping correctly, your stress levels are super high, and that in turn affects how you're raising your kids. You're, you're quick to snap, quick to judgment, quick to anger,
Mhm.
and then you don't realize till it's too late that, oh, what's really what's really happening is I'm reflecting what's happening in the rest of my world.
Right.
So then I have to take a step back, and this is what I consistently do now. Is I take a step back in how I deal with my kids, and I take 3 breaths and I calm down and I try to understand where they're coming from. And that's the same thing I do in leadership and how I teach people to be leaders as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So you gave us some telltale signs, or like what your telltale sign was when you knew that something had to change. Can you tell us a bit more about that? What workplace PTSD, I think, at least sounds like a big deal. I imagine it is. Can you tell us a bit more about that, and what when it's one thing to realize you need to make a change, and then it's another thing to get out there, do the work, and show up day after day. So can you tell us a little bit about that arc for yourself?
So the thing about PTSD is, in my case, I had PTSD from a car accident a long time ago. So I've seen that car accident. I've smelled burnt oil. I've seen the car pop off, the tire pop off. my friend spitting glass out of his mouth in slow motion. I've seen that play out about 5 million times since that day happened like 15 years ago. So what happens, it's the same, the analogy is once you do that, it's like getting a sprained ankle and playing a sport. Then you're more likely to keep doing it. And then it becomes worse each time you do it with something else. So in my case, when I had another car accident that to it, I saw all 8 airbags deploy in slow motion and all that stuff happen. And then so when it came down to me having to deal with the environment I was dealing with, it became so much more because I never fully got to the point of understanding how the PTSD was actually affecting me. So it was affecting multiple things in my life. It was once you get to the point of your PTSD is exaggerated, you're a version of a TBI. So then your impulsivity is way higher. Your anger, quick to judgment is way higher. Your inability to make better decisions when you know the better decision is right in front. So it's more about protecting yourself, but not in a way that's healthy. So the extreme versions are people that have gone through violence or combat or something like that. That's the extreme versions. But at the end of the day, the foundational piece of how PTSD is still the same thing. You've affected your memory in such a way that it almost puts a timestamp and then puts a loop on what you've been doing. So then that's all. So in my case, I've learned to essentially hold my feet to the fire and get the help I needed. And for a little bit of time there, I was on a medication, but it was so bad where this person's head was coming on my wall for 6 straight months. 2 a.m. was screaming at me, telling me to get back to work. That lasted a long time, and it lingered to the point where the next job I had, any person that did something, it triggered it back to what I was doing with it before because I never correctly healed from that. So that led to me writing the book I did and all the stuff that I currently speak about.
Yeah. So tell us a bit more about that. I know you have the book, which is about navigating leadership from toxicity to triumph. And then you also have the core alignment index. Can you tell us a little bit more about both those things?
Yeah. So the book essentially is how do environments become toxic? What led to that? Has leadership looked the other way for so long? Or was there nepotism or favoritism or HR who never does what they're supposed to be doing? Did HR in turn not do what they're supposed to be doing, right? Were things brushed under the table and never heard from again? Or like in the case of what I dealt with, like they were shredding evidence and that kind of stuff, right? But also it's giving the core pieces of why an environment becomes that and how to rectify that and how to put things in place where you're trying to, over the next 6 to 9 months, create a brand new culture in putting in foundational pieces of change management, but also, hey, how do we do where it's servant leadership or it's adaptive leadership or it's centered leadership where we're actually trying to help people. We're meeting people where they're at. We're understanding, hey, I actually know your kid's name and what their favorite sport is and what you like to do when you're not here. And I'm not gonna yell at you if you have to leave to go pick up your kid. That's okay, because I know you're still gonna get your job done no matter what. So it's the little things that add up consistently. Right? So that's the piece, and then there's foundational pieces from that where I have another book I wrote that's coming out at some point. It's the core leadership one, which is more so the centered leadership, right? So core stands for clarity, ownership, regulation, energy. So clarity is what matters most this week. What is my understanding of where my needs are and how can I best serve the people around me? So like prioritization, right? But that's also with anything. That's being a parent, that's being a team leader, that's being a business owner, whatever that is, right? The ownership part is what's mine to fix, right? So let me know what's going on, where I need to do it. It all falls in line. The regulation piece is you have to be the calm piece, be the calm in the room. You have to regulate yourself too. So then you fully understand what the needs are in the room. And the same thing with energy. So there's small rituals consistently equal to big promises. So if you consistently do these pieces, then you're equaling to what your team needs or your kid need, which is essentially consistency in their life. That you're not saying one thing one day and something completely different the next day. So I created the core index around that. There's a quiz tied to a larger 50-question diagnostic, which is tied to a bunch of PDFs, which is in turn tied to a leadership academy that I created. So this is all about resetting yourself as a leader. And then on the other side of that, I have another program called the Reunion, which reset yourself not as a leader, but as a person.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And a lot of this stuff that I've been hearing about recently about like leadership and coaching and whatever, a lot of it is applied to the workplace. But I also feel like a lot of it can be and should be even applied to at home as a parent. Can you tell me what your experience with that is? Is that a fair assessment? And how have you seen as you've dug into leadership and you've become an active coach?
Yeah, 100%. What I always tell people is that I could bore you all day long with the theories and all the other stuff. I'm halfway through my doctorate in strategic leadership. I could bore you all day long. No one cares. What they want to see is break it down into the simplest points. What are the steps that I can do that I can use for anything in my life? I always say that you gotta name it, own it, reset it. So when you're talking to your kid, you go off on them for no reason. You could say little things like, I snapped, that's on me, let's restart. So I try to, sometimes still to this day, especially with my son, sometimes I remind him that I'm in charge, and I throw things and I close the door very hard just to snap him out of his laziness sometimes, right? But I also come back an hour later or 2 hours later, and I sit down with him and I explain why it got to that point and how together we can work on specific steps of allowing that to not happen again. I was wrong for raising my voice or speaking in a certain way. How can we help each other to put the space together where that doesn't happen again?
So you're owning your part, but you're also
Yes. Yes. I think you got to start with that. That's parenting, leadership, whatever it is. You got to start with, I was wrong. I spoke out of turn. I didn't fully hear you. I didn't allow you space to actually speak with your true voice. And so that comes with everything, especially with parenting, is that your kids look at you in a certain way, and you're trying to scaffold the right way to do things. You really are, but you still make mistakes because parenting is hard. I've been doing this for 15 years and I still make mistakes daily. And I still have to take a step back and remind myself, okay, that could have been said completely different. Let's not do that again.
Yeah.
Or I'll tell my daughter, like, hey, I always tell her, because sometimes she gets frustrated, and I say, it's okay to be frustrated. You want to go to your room, be frustrated, throw some things, cool, I'm good with that. What you're not going to do is, in turn, put that on me and speak to me in a manner where I'm the reason why you're frustrated. I said, if you don't want to talk to me for an hour, I'm good with that. But you have to be understanding that there's a certain way to speak about things. You have to create the coping mechanisms that allow you to deal with these things correctly.
Yeah.
But also, hey, I understand you're still growing. Understand this part of hormones and everything comes with that. So I'm trying to allow you the space to just be yourself.
Oh, okay.
Because then that's part of parenting and also part of leadership is that what happens, and Simon Sinek says is really, really great in Leaders Eat Last, right? Is that we move high performers into leadership. What we don't do is teach them how to be leaders. We just assume that because they're high performers, they're going to be great leading people. Often they are not at all in any way, shape, or form. So what we need to do is establish, okay, you were good at this one thing. Let's try to train you up to being a good leader. You can innately be a good leader, but most often you're not. Most often you have to be trained and corrected and being held accountable. I made a lot of mistakes as a leader. I learned a lot of, so that some of the people I complained about, in turn was doing some of the same things. So I had to hold myself accountable. Okay, I can't do that again. Let's lead in a completely different way. Let's meet people where they're at. Let's give them the best resources and tools to be successful. And that's the same thing with parenting. Let's give our kids exactly what they need, and then try to guide them through what it means to be successful.
Right. I think, at least at first glance, that's something that's often overlooked and forgotten about, because having to admit all those things is seen as a sign of weakness. Oh, I have to apologize. I'm going to be weak. I'm going to be considered a bad leader or whatnot. And more often than not, those that come back and say, hey, I messed up on this or that, end up gaining more respect as a leader, or as at least for me as an uncle. It's very easy for me to just react and just from an authoritative position. And then, yeah, I have to come back and just say, I didn't, and having to admit that I was the one in the wrong to a 10-year-old kid for the way. But it's humbling, but it's just opens you up to, I'm human too. And then what you said really struck a chord with me was, what can we do together to make sure that this doesn't happen? How do we hold each other accountable?
And that allows the space for both people to speak, right? And for there to be consistency of accountability. And I think that's truly important as a leader and a parent. I always say that so my daughter's 11 now. When she was 4, and I was still dealing with going back and forth, and me and her mom were still arguing all the time for what reason, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
But one time I went off on my daughter for the 50th time, and I turned and I looked and I saw fear in her eyes. Fear in a 4-year-old's eyes, that humbled the crap out of me. And I had to take 100 steps back and go, what are you doing? This isn't right. Stop doing that. So ever since then, I completely shifted. And do I still get irritated about her? Absolutely, because kids are irritating. But I speak to both my kids in a completely different way. And most of the time, 99% of the time, it's cool, calm, collected.
Yeah.
And it's okay. I'm gonna take a deep breath. I'm gonna be calm in how I'm speaking and how I'm being present to what your needs are, no matter what. So just to pull out random philosophers here, Ram Dass has a book called "Be Here Now," and I try to live that in being present to everything I do. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently writing a memoir, which is taking a lot longer. The whole philosophy is nonfiction is easy to write. It's not. It's still research and putting everything together. But you actually have to deal with your own feelings. And I'm writing a memoir about going through divorce and co-parenting, and that's forcing my brain to the fire. If it's holy crap, you actually dealt with this, and you that hurt, and that didn't feel good, and that sucked really bad. And then it's about specific moments of, like, my son asking me why I didn't live in the house anymore is because we didn't have enough room, that he was going to make room for me in his closet. Right. This is when I first moved out. So the things that I will never tell him, this still hurts, but 11 years later, that still hurts.
Yeah.
That still affects me. So I can understand that I'm still trying to be better for them, but I'm still healing at the same point. So how do you almost compartmentalize that and allow yourself to heal while still being present to what their needs are? And that's a greater exercise of hey, you gotta build that muscle memory. You have to keep doing these things consistently, and you have to keep trying every single day, because otherwise you're gonna do things that you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. So with that, how do you avoid burning yourself out from just trying to go through those motions and building that consistency? Because it takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, that's a great question. How do you not bang your head against the wall when you're feeling completely overwhelmed by the things going on in your life? Right. Every day you have to prioritize what actually means to you, right? There are days that I'm exhausted, that this is coming up, this life event is affecting me again. Or like I'm why am I on unemployment for the 5th time in my career?
Mm-hmm.
So it's dealing with those kind of things, but also you have to, like, outlets. You have to have coping mechanisms. You have to say, I can phone a friend, or I can go. In my case, my outlet is going to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Like I go take it on the weights, and I go until I'm like, okay, I've had enough. This is a cheaper version of counseling. Don't not go to counseling. But in the immediate, if you feel overwhelmed, you got to find an outlet. I have friends that go read, not my thing, but their thing. They go read full books in a day. That's their calm. Or they'll go try different coffee shops around the state, or go find different parks, whatever it is. You got to have that consistency, but you also have to have the foundational piece of relationships in your life with people that support you no matter what. I always say that life events, getting fired, workplace PTSD, parenting, divorce, that kind of stuff, you really figure out the true colors of the people around you, and who really is there to support you, and who's there as reason, season, lifetime kind of thing, right? So I always tell people, as you get older, and I'm guessing I'm a lot older than both of you, is that you start demoting people out of your life. Yeah. You're like, okay, cool. I thought you were my friend. Maybe you were just associates. I thought we were associates. Maybe I don't want to talk to you ever again. And people do that to me too, and I'm okay with that. Like, because at the end of the day, like, the people that are meant to be in my life are going to be in my life.
Yeah,
True.
And I realized really, really quick that hey, divorce and unemployment and all kinds of stuff that's happened in my life, that the consistency of the people in my life have allowed me to remain who I am and become a better person because of that. Now, again, like I said, has the group gotten smaller? Absolutely. And that's okay. You want the quality people to stick around.
exactly. You're recognizing like energy, and we didn't really get into that element of core as much, but
Yeah.
your energy is a finite thing. And so you're rationing it out in the way that benefits you. Because if you're spending your time with somebody who, is an energy vampire or whatever, then you're wasting your time on it.
Rationing out. That's another way. You got some good ones today. Rationing out. That's a great way. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great way of putting it. So we only have a finite amount of energy per day, and how we're dispersing that, and it's in turn shows what's truly a priority to us. The people that say, oh, I'm sorry I didn't text you back, and I'm like, that was 2 months ago.
Yeah.
You're not that busy. I'm sorry. Nobody is that busy. I was like, I had jobs where I worked 16, 17-hour days. I still text people back. So that you're not that busy. I'm just not a priority in your life, and it's okay. That's okay, because I can take some of that energy and put it more towards my kids or the people that actually want to be around me. So I'm stealing that now. I'm gonna ration that out correctly to the people that should be in my life.
Yeah. And I really this point about like having that support of building that community. We've talked about this a couple of times, Andrew. So there's that element of paring down your community. Have you dealt with also building it up, finding the people you want to bring into your fold? Or do you have suggestions for our listeners who are like, I need a support network, but I don't have that?
There are a ton of support networks, some better than others. I've been a part of a few of them. But yeah, to your point, you have to surround yourself with people that are similar in drive and passion and success, right? They're gonna push each other to be better. So if you're still, not to say it's against the grain to still be friends with someone from high school that's still doing the same thing, never left that town, which I have friends like that too, right? But it's okay to find higher level, higher tier people that are trying to do the same things that you are. So in my case, I've added my friend has 4 very successful self-published books, and she has her PhD in psychology. She runs her own mental health firm here in Columbus. I've surrounded myself with people like that that are doing big things, that are trying to. Part of it is building the community, but they're also within the community trying to better the community. So that's my core. That's my core thing is, and I lead with empathy. I lead with compassion. I lead with how can we together make this better, right? Now it's in the flow of that, you still can find ways to make money and be successful in all the things. But I think if you surround yourself with like-minded, the core being of who they are is the same people that lead with empathy and compassion and try to understand the community as a whole, I think together you can create amazing things.
And it sounds like a core piece of that, no pun intended.
I like it. Look, you, you could be my hate man on the road.
Trust me, Paul is one of those that can just come up with something like a pun.
That's great. I like it.
If I'm fed and well slept, so you have to. Anyway, let's see if I can remember my point. It sounds like a core piece of that is knowing, what makes you tick, what you're after. So the type of people you want to surround yourself with. Whereas, so maybe this ties back into clarity and into having your priorities straight, because if you don't know what you're after, then you don't know who you want to surround yourself with.
Yeah, 100%. And that's unfortunately that comes with the wisdom of growing older and doing the wrong things and trying the wrong things and speaking to the wrong people. And in my case, I was getting in a lot of trouble when I got out of the military. I was getting in a lot of trouble because I was like, "Hey, let's go party and have a good time." And I'm like, "Oh, why are you on academic probation again in college for the third time?" And they're freezing your GI Bill money, right? Why does this keep happening? And you're at that point, 2005, I got a DUI. So why do you keep making these choices and not making better ones? Part of it is the people you surround yourself with, but part of it comes with life is chaotic. Like my mom once says that life is a chaotic mess, sprinkled with bouts of happiness. The ebb and flow is constant. So some days might be awesome, some days might really truly suck, but it's how you deal with it in that moment. And are the people, your support base and your relationships with your communities, are they going to be with you on this journey, or are they going to push you away because they don't feel like that's part of who they are?
Yeah,
Wow.
that makes sense. And you talked about how you learn your priorities and what you're after by the mistakes you make. And I've heard elements of that before, and I've heard you become you become the person you want to become through trial and tribulation and suffering. So considering those things, and considering you've got 2 kids at home, and most of our listeners either have kids or want to have kids, knowing that they have trials ahead of them, knowing that they're going to make mistakes, it's just part of the game. What would you say is 1 or 2 of the top tools that we can give them or help them build to navigate that in a way that I guess is effective for them to find their North Star?
I think part of it is knowing who you are. That's a big one, right? Is today's version of me isn't yesterday's version of me. And if that is the case, then what do I need to shift correctly to become a better version of yesterday? So part of that. So that's it. That's holding yourself accountable, knowing who you truly are, and knowing your pain points / what makes you tick. This is all part of, okay, I know this is gonna make me mad. So either how do I work within that, or how do I change my environment where I don't have to deal with it? Right. Now, in the case of being a parent, sometimes you can't change your environment, right? Because your kid's irritating you and frustrating you. And you're like, okay, I can't go anywhere because my kids are here. But what can I do internally to not allow myself to get mad about it and still be present to what they need? So it's little checklists that you can do on a day-to-day basis of holding yourself accountable, knowing who you really are, and understanding what your pain points / what makes you tick, and trying to correctly handle each one accordingly.
Yeah.
Is there something specific that you yourself do? We've had other speakers talk about journaling or meditation or.
Yeah, on top of the going to the gym and that, but I like to write. And I've been a writer since 5th grade now, and I've taken creative writing in college and done a bunch of other things, and that's what's getting to the point where I'm writing all these books. But sometimes I just pull up my phone and pull up notes and start writing stuff. So it allows me to, okay, here's what I'm feeling in the moment. Let me put those words down. Sometimes I come back to those words and I'm like, that absolutely doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But in that moment, it allowed me to calm down and create that space of, okay, I'm separating myself from what's happening around me.
Yeah.
And I'm still thinking about how to move forward within this environment.
So it just comes back to having those outlets, like we talked about in the burnout.
Yeah.
In these scenarios.
100%. So I'll give you an example. And this happened in June. In June, I was in Puerto Rico visiting my family. My mom's from Ponce, and a lot of my family still lives there. So last time I visited was pre-COVID, and I was dating somebody at the time. And this time, I'm single, but I'm going back with my brother, my sister-in-law, and some of my nephews. We're going to the exact same spots that I went with pre-COVID with my girlfriend at the time. So it was very surreal. It was very like, holy crap, what is happening? And so sat at the airport on the way back, and I wrote an entire article about waving at your feelings from the airport window. And what that means, going through the same environments, but at a different time and a different place, and how that really affects you moving forward. That was actually really real word, not the crappy pieces I've written on my notes. I actually put that on Medium, but I think you have to get to the point where you have to find what is your anchor.
Yep.
And consistently go to that anchor. It's like was it Leonardo DiCaprio movie where he was dreaming all the time?
Oh, Inception.
So Inception, he had the little top and he was spin it.
Yep.
That has to be your version of your anchor point, where you're consistently coming back to that, and it's allowing you to reset yourself.
Okay.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marchem. We've covered a lot, and I think you've provided our listeners a lot to think about, a lot of practical ways to bring it home as well. So I would like to do two things before we wrap up here. One is ask for one thing to share with the audience, and the other is to share where folks can find you. So first, the question, what is one small thing that the dads listening to this podcast that like you want to tell them? Yeah, one thing that you wanted to share with them, if you would share one piece of advice.
I think specifically, Dan, if they can choose calm over control and be consistent about that, then we've done our job in this podcast. Calm over control consistently.
Yeah.
So,
And everything you do.
yep. And you shared some great ways to tap into that calm. And where can folks find you?
So the books on Amazon, Navigating Leadership from Toxicity to Triumph, and then everything else that I'm trying to do, the core alignment quiz, the diagnostic, a bunch of my courses are at marchempfeiffer.com. That's my webpage.
Okay. And then you also mentioned that you're on Medium.
Yeah, I'm on Medium. So that is Marchem Pfeiffer 12. I have currently, I think 12 or 14 articles on there. I try to put one out once or twice a week.
Awesome.
Covers all that stuff, burnout and toxicity, but it also covers the waving from the airplane and truly finding the emotion in that and allowing yourself to let that go.
Yeah. I really like that. I think maybe we'll have to have a round two talking about acknowledging our emotions, which I think as men is such a hard thing to do sometimes. But this has been such a great conversation, Marchem. I appreciate your time. We covered a lot. We covered your personal story, and where that brought you to the core framework today, and helping develop leadership, how we bring that home, and several practical ways to show up as a parent and a leader. So thank you, listeners. Be sure to go check out Marchem's stuff, and we very much appreciate your time, Marchem.
I had a great and wonderful time, and you can bring me back anytime.
Oh, we'd love to.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody. You know where to find us.
Yes. Thank you, Marchem. Thank you, Paul. Thank you all.
Great. Excellent.